is just fantastic. As you can tell, there's no planned captain's log, and I'm not, even though I was going to, responding to Magog's calling me a ponce. I'll get to that, don't you all worry. I'm sure no one is, but I'll get to it. The reason why is because I want to discuss what's been going on with James Charles, as this does raise a number of questions when it comes to age, consent, informed no less, but also position, power, privilege. For me, I've only heard prior to what's been going on of James Charles because of his phenomenal success. The phenomenal success came from his makeup line, similar to that of Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson, all three of whom have been cancelled in differing ways. I've also only really heard of James Charles because of the Tati Westbrook incident, but in truth I wasn't paying all that much attention to it. Mostly because, at the time, I didn't want to comment too much on what I considered to be drama. Petty drama, no less. Times changed and I realised actually this is quite fascinating. So it's certainly worth going through now, because it raises a number of questions about people who are in such vaunted positions, highly respected positions, and how they handle it, how they handle themselves, and what they do with it to others. Another prevalent theme, along with that of petty, over the last 7 months, has been the proclivity for those who have a taste for younger blood. James Charles himself is quite young. Some incidents concerned people who crossed far too many lines and it took over a decade for anything to really happen. Mainstream, that is, especially. Other incidents are open to interpretation depending on whether or not you're arguing from a legal or moral perspective. Up to now the more recent, you do realise how old you are and how old they were when you started messaging. Some of these within themselves contain grey areas, yes, because it depends on interpretation of the evidence. There was a fourth, by the way. It concerned people who had massive presences on social media who go on to be mocked by the likes of SNL, who are renowned for not being funny because they utterly failed at every single step of the way because they were too busy, air quotes, having fun, end air quotes. For any creator of any level of success to be looked up to by others means that there is always going to be an inherent risk that if you are in a position of, let's call it, privilege and power, you could end up misusing it and harming another person. For many of us, that is not our intent. For many, it's also a case that they're not used themselves to having that kind of attention. They don't understand how to deal with it. I am not making an excuse, by the way, merely stating the options that usually end up being thrown out. This will then lead to some people getting hurt. Typically, the former fan and/or viewer. Possibly patron. It does depend on the circumstances and how that relationship, whether that be platonic and/or more, develops. The more successful you are, so subscriber count surely plays a part. The level of success that allows you to obtain, whether that be through sponsorships, your own makeup line, merch, let's just call it a smaller version of a franchise, will also play a factor in whether people look up to you in a certain way. With that comes a huge consequence. The more successful you get, the harder it is to be more down to earth, as many would call it, in the sense that you are no longer able to relate to those people because you have become, to many, to be above it all, to be on a pedestal, to be residing within an ivory tower. Perhaps if you've been a bit too successful and a bit too arrogant, you might actually own a literal ivory tower. At this point, I should probably just cut off from the whole positing and theorizing to try and understand the people and the creators, and instead focus on what actually happened that has gotten James Charles into even more trouble. So much so that the mainstream media, even in my country, were talking about it. Because we find it fascinating when somebody of his age is seen messaging people who are underage, something which he himself has had to admit to. And I do want to insert this point now. Many pointed out within his apology that there was a vast number of upvotes to downvotes. My view was, he got millions of views. The upvotes and downvotes don't reflect that. It shows you a percentage of that reflecting it. The rest just watched the video and didn't make up their mind or engage at all, and or simply commented down below, as there were close to 80,000 comments. A video called Holding Myself Accountable, where you admit to everything that you have done. A number of your peers, Shane Dawson and David Dobrik more notably, have been demonetized by YouTube because of the controversies. I couldn't help but notice you haven't been yourself. I know you have before, by the way. Back in 2019, I'm sure this will take a little bit of time and YouTube will then act. I will insert this like I did last week. I don't support deplatforming or demonetizing. If a person chooses to deplatform themselves, like Nathan Jones has when it came to him taking accountability to turning a blind eye towards Destry Smith's actions, then that is a personal choice. And of course, if James Charles has been found to have violated TOS, then of course he should be removed. But that is only if you violate the rules of YouTube, on YouTube. Because James Charles has confessed though, this does raise a number of legal issues. This should go to the police. Simple as that. If he is found guilty of something, yes, he goes in an ISO cube. But all necessary next steps need to be taken. One of the more despicable things that has been noticed over the years when it came to James Charles and his taste for younger blood was the very much sexually aggressive nature involved. Whether that be him using the For You page on TikTok to slide into people's DMs because they're cute. Since putting out your apology video or holding yourself accountable, many people have not accepted your apology, not only because this has happened before numerous times, but also because many believe that this is not a genuine apology. This is, like all others before, damage control, and an attempt by you to look sincere in trying to explain how you were wrong and you'll never do it again, even though, at this point with the amount of apologies you've made in the past, you should just have a playlist for those, or your channel should just become them. At this point, with what you have done over and over again, I look at you as nothing more than a parasite. You are as bad as many of the others who have done this as well. And I would include those who have had documentaries made on them by Chris Hansen, which sounds incredibly harsh from me. But you have done this over and over again, James. You are no better than him. You are as bad as him. And you should be, like he has been, held accountable to the same standard. So I keenly await the 30 to 50 videos made by Repzion obsessing over every tiny detail of your life. It will be the only way I consume information when it concerns you. Or Repzilla, because I want to play with his hair. There has been a nagging, gnawing point stuck in the back of my head. One that concerned when James acknowledges he has asked people their ages before and they have claimed themselves to be the correct age. I.e. that old enough to have informed consent discussions of the more intimate variety which leads to more intimate activities. The gnawing point that gets stuck in my head is it by extension possible for anyone who is online, influencer of any kind, to have any level of intimate discussion with people that look up to them, even if they are old enough? For me at this point, I'm inclined to believe the answer is no. Especially when the age of the person you are speaking to, if you are the influencer and creator, is barely legal. Then again, receipts really don't do James any favours when he claims they all told him 18, do they?